We all know how important it is to get kids reading. Some kids love it, some kids hate it, but how do you even get the kids that love to read what they're supposed to? How much reading is enough? We are here today with expert Karen Emerson, who actually is a reading specialist, has her master's in experiential education and over 20 years of teaching experience. And she is going to talk to us today about getting kids to read. Thanks for coming, Karen.
Absolutely. I think getting kids to read is really the crux of being a good reader. Studies show over and over again that the kids who read most read best. And of course, what do you do with the kids who hate reading? And even the kids who do like reading often choose other things.
Right. I think it's just so important because, you know, we've got science and math and all of those things in school, but reading is what really opens up your world. If you can read, you can do almost anything. Let's talk about reluctant readers. How can we get them started?
Well, reluctant readers, often a key is to make sure that they're being 95% accurate. And you can do that in a couple of ways. One way is to make sure you're finding books at levels that they can mostly read, where they're only making a few mistakes. Because if you're reading things where you're 95% accurate, then you are understanding the book, you're understanding the vocabulary, you're building your vocabulary, and there's a level of interest and fun in it. When you're struggling with so many words, all you're doing is practicing decoding. It's not interesting because your short-term memory is used up with decoding. And it's not fun. So then the way to become 95% accurate is with help. So maybe I'm going to read with you who is struggling reading, and as soon as you stumble on a word, I just feed it to you. So you're practicing the words you know, and I'm giving you the words you don't. So you're not stressing about the decoding, you're not stressing about the reading, and so I might be feeding you 15 words on a page, and if they're reading out loud or if they're reading to themselves, they just point to it and you tell them.
As you mentioned, I like to read with my children one page at a time. It does seem to reduce the stress. They know that they only have to do half of it. What if you have kids who love to read, but then there are certain things they don't love to read, but they have to read?
One way to approach it is just the independence route. You know, you're going to need to read, you know, Of Mice and Men for this book report for your, you know, how are you going to handle that? What's the best way for you to handle that? If this is a child who reads well, then they don't need the practice reading. You could read it out loud to them. You could borrow it from the library on tape. Now, I'd never watch the movie instead, but listening to it on tape or you reading out loud to your child might be a more enjoyable way to hear that.
How do we make kids choose reading, even though kids love reading, versus electronics? Dun dun dun, the age-old question. So what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, we really need to think like marketers. We really need to think like about, if I want my kid to love reading, then they need to walk into our home and see it all around them. They need to walk in, and the first thing they need to see are a bunch of books face out, not spine out, because the spine isn't interesting. And it needs to be magazines, it needs to be comic books. Reading is where kids get vocabulary. Comic books have fabulous vocabulary, you know. So
adjectives, a lot of adjectives and expressive language, yes.
And parents shouldn't worry about what their kids are reading. It can be comic books, it can be directions, it can be a cereal box, anything as long as they're reading. When you walk in, if the first thing you see is a television, it's pretty easy to plop down on the couch and click it on. For me too.
Yes.
And so if you move the television to the basement and you put the remote away in a high shelf in a drawer, so that it's just takes that many more steps to get there, and it's that much easier to plop down on the couch and pick up something to read. Same
Concept as making healthy snacks easier to get at than sugary snacks. So I actually have one of the books we have here is one of my son's favorites, and I want to talk about this a little bit because this book is called Pick Me Up, and it's actually full. Every different page is kind of on a different topic, and it gives you a lot of little factoids on it. And I love this because it's like bite size, it's like snacking. It's a snack for readers. You can learn just a little bit about a topic. So, and then you've got great stories, you know, like Matilda by Roald Dahl, which is more involved reading. So I think offering a variety of different kinds of reading materials is also important. You've shared so much with us today. Do you have anything else you want to add? Or
I would just say keep reading out loud to your kids. It's such a bonding time and it's such a family time, and that's a way to introduce genres too, where you know, as a teacher I always try to get all the different genres in throughout the year, but as a parent, you know, before you go to bed or whenever is the best time, gather the family around, the whole family, mom, dad, kids, you know, and read, you know, a Roald Dahl book, read different kind of genres, and that's another way to just get them interested. The other way to trick kids who don't like reading is to read the first third of a very interesting book and then stop.
Yes. Oh, funny. Karin, you are such a wealth of information. We could talk about this for hours because actually reading is very near and dear to my heart. But I'm sure people must have a lot of questions, and there's a lot more you could say about the topics we've been discussing. Are you available online, or how would people find out more about the things you have to teach?
I am developing 2 websites. One is really geared towards parents and how to help their kids in school and reading and that kind of thing. And the other one is geared towards how to learn how to read.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And it was just really a pleasure. If you want to see more of this interview or learn more about the things Karin and I discussed today, visit our website.